already previously stated, I'm going to try and see if this thing actually works. I'm Nicole Elizabeth Bradley. I am from IUP. I am on my 4th year of schooling out of 5.5. I'm a dual baccalaureate in English education and music. I also have a minor in special education, and starting hopefully in the fall, pending final approval, I'll be starting a minor also in educational psychology. So my specialty is education, and with that being said, I'm going to try to make this as interactive as I can for all of you guys. So bear with me, I'm the teacher. So this is just sort of my proposal. Obviously my presentation is on the open truth about depression. So just to go ahead and get started, how do all of you guys in here define depression? This is the part where I say get interactive. Take a shot out.
Feeling low.
Feeling low?
Yeah, I'm in an education class right now called Diversity of Learners, and there's like a list of characteristics, like feeling sad for, like no discernible reason, or like, not socializing. Like there's a bunch of lists of characteristics.
So exactly that. A lot of people think depression looks like this 24/7. That is not accurate. Depression actually looks like this. That is me. I actually was diagnosed with clinical depression just January this past year. Have been suffering from depression probably since I was really little, really young as a child. Several times I was told to be referred to go to a counselor, but chose not to or wouldn't do follow-ups or anything. So a little bit about my journey with depression. Everybody's depression is a little bit different. Depression itself, though, is basically a common but serious disorder that sort of affects how you're feeling, how you think, how you interact daily on a daily basis. My biggest thing, for instance, is I have real problems with sleep. I have never really been able to sleep well. I have terrible insomnia, and just recently what kind of prompts my own diagnosis in January is I started having suicidal nightmares. So that's sort of like the definition of depression. That's from the National Institute of Mental Health. And some of the other symptoms, again, we talked about sort of low feeling, sort of an empty mood, feeling of hopelessness or pessimism, irritability, feelings of guilt, decreased energy, moving or talking more slowly, feeling restless, difficulty concentrating. The list goes on and on. Depression is sort of one that encompasses many things. And so right now, currently though, depression, although in the past maybe 20 years, has started to get a little bit more education to it, a little bit more looked into. A lot of people still look at depression as something that's not reasonable. So I have a small little clip. I love this video. Some of you might have already seen it because I know it was circulating on social media for a while. So hopefully sound works.
Really, a lot of people are worse off than you know.
I'm getting tired of hearing about this.
Oh, honey, snap out of it.
You're kind of driving me down.
Why don't you just go outside, get some sunshine, you'll be fine.
Hi.
Can we stop with the pity party?
From an actual organization. They were doing some sort of getting the word out on depression, and unfortunately that is something that a lot of people with depression face. I've faced it lots of times, and whenever I was diagnosed with depression, one of the first things a lot of people said to me was like, "You really? How on earth do you have depression?" I was always that up and going person. I was that person who was the perfectionist. I was the person that was actively involved. I never showed any signs of weakness. I was involved with everything possible that made me look happy and excited. I had friends, I had many things going right for me, but a lot of people did not believe I had depression, and a lot of people said, well, you're just having a depressive episode, because at the same time when I was diagnosed was when I went through a short breakup, we're back together now, with my boyfriend, and it actually was the trigger for not only the suicidal nightmares, though I've had a few in the past, but actual thoughts and starting to experiment with self-harm. So again, some of the statisticals with depression. Approximately 14.8 million Americans above the age of 18, which is where we start to see it a little bit more, though we do see it in kids, it's starting to kind of come out in the open, are affected by mental illnesses, particularly depression being the biggest one. And 31 and 33 million children are diagnosed with clinical depression, whereas 1 in 8 adolescents, so this is particularly kids in high school, secondary, starting usually around puberty, middle school, going onward, that are diagnosed with clinical depression. And it often co-occurs with many other illnesses. For instance, my own, they believe I might have gotten it triggered because I also have Hashimoto's thyroid disease. And so that affects hormonal levels, and so they also think my depression might be possibly linked to that. There's lots of things that go into depression that makes it more of a physical thing within the brain. It's not just something that people can just get over it. So going against the current is sort of the point and theme of this entire conference. And as I said, right now, although in the last 20 years it's gotten better, the current of depression is something that you can get over with in after starting meds or something. It's something that's easy. You just gotta change your attitude or whatever. So going against the current, though, to kind of sort of educate and make the point of really what the truth is about depression, is first for you all, stop and hold back against any of your initial gut feelings and reaction when you learn somebody's depressed. A lot of people, first thought is like, oh, you're just fine. This is just a period. You just try to be sympathetic. But for a lot of people who suffer from depression, that's not something that's just they can get over it. I have a good friend of mine who's lives with some family, and her family do not understand her depression. They think it's absolutely nothing, and so they do not support her. And anytime she has a bad day, depression will cause some bad days for me. I just kind of lay in bed all day. And it's a day of recovery, a day of recoup. They refuse to let her have those days. They say that she needs to get outside or do stuff, which is unfortunate for her. But they think they're being sympathetic and helpful when it's actually making it worse for them because they feel outcasted. So with that being said, be open and honest to others. So with me, for instance, I've gotten to the point where I'm happy to talk about my own depression. I'm happy to talk to others about their own depression by being open and honest about who I am and about what I go through. Truth is, though, a lot of us, though, are usually closed up. We don't like to share who we are on the inside. We want to just keep ourselves within this little shell casting. We refuse to go outside of the box. We don't want to we want to be part of society. We don't want to show weakness. That's the biggest thing, is nobody ever wants to show weakness. And depression is all too often, to many people, a sign of weakness. I know I was originally encouraged and semi-diagnosed back in May of 2014, and I went to the counselor one time on my university's campus, and they said that they thought I had depression. I didn't go back at all. My reasoning for not going back is I was not going to submit to being weak. So being open and honest to others about yourself, but also for those suffering from depression, be open and honest to your own being. Excuse me, I think I'm starting to get a bit of a spring allergy cough and stuff. Stop believing in stereotypes. This is a huge one. In fact, I came in this morning, kind of finished up some final touches on my presentation, and I was sitting near the registration desk, and I heard some professors talking to students about one of the papers they were going to read. And the professor made a comment that the student was worried their paper was too depressive. So this is something that pops up all the time. They think, oh, you're sad and gloom and doom, or you're worried about your paper being sad or going to upset people or be emotional and people are going to look at you funny. And right away it's kind of connected to being depressive, or it's quit being depressed. And there's so many other mental healths. I love this picture because it has so many stereotypes. But for instance, I'm skinny, so I must be anorexic. So many mental health people who suffer from these actual diseases have all these other stereotypes that are labeled for that type of thing. That's just not accurate. So stop believing in the stereotypes and actually stand up against the stereotypes. Be supportive. Don't make them or let them feel any different from yourself, but also support diversity. So by that being said, all of us, and this is my firm belief, every one of us here alive in the world is unique. None of us are the same. But however, within society, we have this sort of need to be the same. Everything's got to be the same. You've got to have the top everything to be the best. I mean, that's what we see in basically every sort of tabloid, sort of celebrity news all the time. Is like, you got to have this new phone or whatever. First off, for those who are usually going through depression, they already feel left out. They feel like they can't connect. They don't understand why they're different from other people. So just reach out to them. Be like, hey, you're not different. You're the same. And also make sure you also bring awareness that you yourself are different from the world. They are different, but everybody is unique. Everybody is different, and that's a good thing. Pay attention to your own mental health. So many people, like I went so many years without being diagnosed with depression, but actually suffering depression. A lot of people just don't pay attention to it. They don't realize that, hey, maybe my own mental health is like not in the best place it should be. So make sure you're paying attention to your own mental health. So explaining depression to the non-believers, in case there's anybody in here who might actually have depression, or maybe you're trying to know somebody very close to you whose family, like I said, my friends this way, who doesn't believe in depression and believes depression is just something that society has made up and is not like a big deal. Ask about why they don't believe in it first. Find out what the reasoning is for it. So many people say it's just a made up thing, or oh, it's just another excuse for people to act lazy. That's one that I hear all the time. But ask about why they don't believe in it, because that's the first way you can kind of like combat them, and well, not so much combat them, because it sounds like you're attacking them, but be able to explain it a little better on like what depression is. Be frank about how much you're struggling with depression if you're the one suffering from it, or even if you have a friend, even if you sit down with a friend who, again, being open and honest about what's going on within their own head, within their own personality, within their own daily activities. Being open and honest and being able to say, this is what's going on to me, this is what I got to deal with, and just be open and honest and try to hope that they'll accept you. Be prepared for ignorant questions and outright rejections. This happens all the time. A lot of people, like I said, just are very, very ignorant to the fact that depression is a disease, and there are actual brain scans they've done on the brain that for people who have depression, and basically still don't believe in science. Highlight your wish to get better and how denying it isn't solving anything. So many people who suffer from depression, their family members are just like, oh, you don't have depression, don't worry about it. And that's not a big deal. It's just a certain episode. It's going to be like gone in a month. So highlight that like you do suffer from it and you want to get better, but you got to get better through counseling, or you got to get better through medication. So many different people have to get over basically depression with different methods. There's group counseling. I go to a counselor. Actually, I do group counseling. I'm at IEP weekly. I go to a counselor bi-weekly. I was going weekly, but slowly I've gotten better with my own stuff. It's sort of controlling it, plus I've been doing 2 forms of counseling. I'm on medications for both insomnia and for antidepressants. So obviously I'm taking the right steps to get better and to treat myself and get me to where I should be, for where I want to be rather. So I'm highlighting that to people who don't believe in depression, but kind of letting them know that like there's different ways. It's not something that's just going to get better on its own. Have the science on hand. As I said, they've done brain scans and have shown in the brain where the chemicals interact and show depression in some human brains. Backup diagnosis with validations from somewhere they trust. So a lot of people like to say that people who have depression are using it as just an excuse to not do stuff. But sometimes what it takes is showing that your actual diagnosis to them, but also showing other people's diagnosis. Robin Williams is a huge one. I mean, again, his another case that was linked to a disease, but to the fact that he was told he was going to die in another like 2 or 3 years anyways, caused him to go into a depression to end up committed suicide. So just kind of a good example there. There's so many resources out there now, especially like I said, in the last 20 years, it's gotten to be more out in the open. Be wary of comments about simply getting over it with drugs. Again, yes, drugs are helpful. They're great for some things, but that's not typically the only thing that's needed with depression. Usually you need somebody you need to talk to, get it off your chest, tell them like what's going on in your head, especially particularly with meds. Medications can sometimes make depression worse. There's so many different medications that exist out there, so it's really a balance of trial and error. But the only way to find out if your meds are actually helping you is if you're also talking to somebody who's a specialized agent, which is usually a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Convey that recovery is going to take a long time, and you may very well not get over depression ever. This is something that a lot of people go through all the time. And then understanding may treat you differently. That's usually hard when it's like family and loved ones who don't accept the fact that you do suffer from depression. They start treating you better, and it's hard, especially since they start judging every little thing you do. Like, oh, is this supposed to be a sign that you're getting worse or something? Like, they start judging every little thing, and just be understanding that they might do that, and kind of just have to accept them for who they are. So why in the humanities? All of us are English majors. We're all in the humanities subject. Does depression matter? Well, let's just talk about what the definition of humanities is in the first place. It's a study of the human condition. It's a study of who we are, what we do. We remember the past. We imagine the future. We have emotions, joy, depression, terror. It's all part of who we are. And one of the biggest things, too, for a reason why I definitely wanted to come and talk about depression at this conference versus like some educational psychology is the fact that in literature we can do so much with controlling how people look at things. Media is now, media is like news stuff, but other media like movies, books, stuff like that, those have so much control over what society believes in. And oftentimes you look at literature and you don't ever see a cross between emotions. You always see just one present emotion and another present emotion. You don't see that they interact and occur together. And so a lot of times when people are reading a lot of Gothic poetry, and to most people depressive, it's just one emotion that's present, and that shows, like, back to my original picture that you're depressed 24/7, when that's really not the case. It's really a sort of interbreeding of multiple emotions. I show happiness. I'm a goofball at times. I'm presenting up here, I feel rather confident. So it's an integration. You gotta mold multiple emotions together. And that's the best way to show that depression is something that can be accepted into society. So that's all my work cited. So I know we're doing questions at the end, but thank you very much.